How's it going, guys? It's Gregor. In this video I'm going to be talking about British cruisers. The officially released line of British cruisers, anyway. As always, when a new tech tree is added to the game, it means a new line of cruisers from 1 to 10 to start it. Finding material for this line couldn't have been more easy, though. The Brits fielded a healthy number of many ship classes, and many cruiser designs across the world were influenced by them. So let's get into the tree itself then. I'll describe the history of the ships as well as how I think they'd function in-game, like I always do. Tier 1, Black Swan, commissioned 1939. The Black Swan class of sloops served with both the Royal Navy and the Royal Indian Navy during the Second World War. 12 of them were built in their original configuration. The ships were mainly used for convoy defense and were well suited to dealing with submarines and aircraft. Black Swans were responsible for sinking a good deal of U-boats, with a lot of credit going to Captain Frederick John Walker of HMS Starling, sinking 11 of them. Since this is a Tier 1 ship, I'm going to keep it short and simple. The ship's armed with 3 dual-barreled turrets holding 4-inch guns. That'd be the smallest caliber of weapons at Tier 1, so I'm assuming they make up for it with rate of fire and sheer number of. The AA suite consists of 4 2-pounder pom-poms and 4 50 cal machine guns. Typical Tier 1 ship. Let's move on. Tier 2, HMS Weymouth, commissioned 1911. HMS Weymouth was a subclass of the Town-class cruiser built before World War I. The ships were built with range in mind, meant to patrol over the vast area of the British Empire. So there were 4 of these ships built within the Weymouth subclass. HMS Weymouth served both in the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and eventually to the Indian Ocean, where it eventually helped contribute to the sinking of the commerce raider SMS Königsberg. At Tier 2, there's also not much to talk about, but it's still worth mentioning. Like any other low-tier light cruiser, I wouldn't call it a particularly tough ship, but it has respectable weaponry with 8 single-mounted 6-inch guns, as well as a secondary battery of 4 single-mounted 3-pounders, max speed, 25 knots, quite respectable. A swift Tier 2 cruiser with respectable weaponry. Secondary battery is certainly notable. Very few ships have a secondary battery at Tier 2, so, moving on. Tier 3, HMS CALEDON, commissioned 1917. HMS CALEDON was a so-called C-class light cruiser built towards the end of World War I and was the lead of the CALEDON subclass. CALEDON came under fire by a pair of German battleships, of which the ship managed to survive the encounter and continued serving even in the Second World War as an escort ship, even involved in the pursuit of the German battleships Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. So in-game it could be penned by just about everything, but it's fairly quick with a max speed of 21 knots. Only the Tenryu is faster for a cruiser at this tier. Armament, 5 single-mounted 6-inch guns with 2 3-inch anti-aircraft guns. 6 inches is the same caliber that the St. Louis has and the highest of Tier 3 cruisers, so certainly respectable. Moving on. Tier 4, HMS DANAE, commissioned 1918. This ship was a bit of a globetrotter, like many British cruisers. Leader of the DANAE, or D class of ships, it was given to the Polish Navy in 1944 and served as ORP Conrad. The ship was a part of the Special Service Squadron alongside HMS Hood and HMS Repulse for a time. During the Second World War, it served as a patrol and escort ship. Typical of cruisers at Tier 4, the ship's armor isn't anything to write home about, but it has guns. So the ship had several refits, and I'm going to assume the top hull would be the 1943 configuration. I don't mention torpedo tubes, but previous versions of the ship before this point did have them. So 5 6-inch guns and 1 4-inch gun, for whatever reason. I guess that's a secondary armament. And then lots and lots of AA. 8 40mm pom-poms, 3 quadruple-mounted 2-pounder guns, and 12 20mm cannons. Speed, 21 knots, more than enough to keep up with friendly battleships. So what you have here then, a respectable support ship. It's as fast as a Svetlana, and it certainly has the most amount of anti-aircraft guns for cruisers in regular progression lines. Now, let's get into mid-tier. Tier 5, HMS Emerald, commissioned 1926. The lead of the Emerald class of light cruisers had a pretty active service life and served in a wide number of groups as a patrol and escort vessel during the Second World War in the Persian Gulf, and was also a part of a task force during the Normandy invasion supporting Gold Beach. Again, the armor isn't anything substantial, but it has a wide range of weapons and was refitted a number of times. I'll assume the 1944 variant as the top configuration. So, 5 6-inch single-mounted guns were its main armament. The AA suite was ludicrous. 2 2-pounder quad pom-poms, and 4 3-pounder single pom-poms, 6 20mm cannons, and 6 dual 20mm cannons. It also had torpedoes, 4 quadruples for a total of 16, top speed 29 knots. This ship is absolutely bristling with anti-aircraft guns, and like her predecessor, HMS DANAE, would make an excellent support craft. If you like the Kirov for its AA, you'll probably like this ship too. Moving on. Tier 6, HMS LEANDER, commissioned in 1933. During World War II, HMS Leander was actually denoted HMNZS, as it served with the Royal New Zealand Navy for the course of World War II, commissioned for that point of its service in '41. It dealt with an Italian armed merchantman ship near the Maldives, and another one used by the Vichy French in the Indian Ocean. It was also active against the Vichy during the Syria-Lebanon campaign. In '43, Leander was hit by torpedoes and was so badly damaged that it couldn't participate in the rest of the war. Returned to the Royal Navy in '45, it was involved in the Corfu Channel incident in '46, which resulted in the UK cutting off its diplomatic ties with Albania for several decades. But that's another history lesson. So I think it makes sense that this ship is placed at Tier 6. Armor was negligible, but it carried 8 single-mounted 6-inch guns and 4 4-inch guns, as well as 12 50 cal machine guns and 8 21-inch torpedo tubes. It's not a lot comparably to previous tiers in terms of AA power, but I think the rationale for this ship being a higher tier, though, has to do with a top speed of 32.5 knots, as well as the ability to carry either the Ferry Sea Fox or the Supermarine Walrus, depending on what type of catapult it has mounted. I'm not necessarily saying that it's going to be competitive at this tier, but I can't really see it functioning at Tier 5 either, personally. Anyway, Tier 7, HMS Fiji, commissioned, 1940. HMS Fiji was built by John Brown and Company, known as the John Brown that had that raid in my hometown. I'm talking about the Scottish shipbuilding firm responsible for building ships like HMS Hood and Repulse. Fiji was the first of the Crown Colony-class cruisers to be built, and as a result of this, the class is sometimes referred to as the Fiji class. She almost took place in Operation Menace, an attack on French West Africa, but was damaged by a U-boat before it could join the task force. In '41, it was reassigned to patrol the Denmark Strait. Unfortunately, the ship suffered a tragic fate in the Mediterranean when it was sunk by an overwhelming force of German aircraft alongside HMS Gloucester after fighting off attacks for 2 hours. Alright, stats. Again, armor is whatever. It can bounce low-caliber shells, but that's about it. Main armament consisted of 4 triple-barreled 6-inch guns, 2 front, 2 back, with 8 4-inch guns in its secondary suite. AA suite consisted of 2 quadruple 2-pounder pom-pom guns and 16 quad-mounted 50 cals, so lots of machine guns at least. She also carried 2 triple-tubed torpedo launchers and had room to carry 2 Supermarine Walruses. Top speed, 33 knots. Now, the only thing here is that at Tier 7, when it comes to cruisers and AEA, it's usually pretty solid, and here it's not quite as potent. The only thing really going for the Fiji is lots of machine guns when all the other Tier 7 cruisers have cannons. I don't know. I can't really draw opinions yet because I haven't played these ships myself, but that doesn't really look too promising, personally. When you got ships like Miyoko and Shores competing at this tier, it's going to be pretty difficult to keep up. Anyway, moving on. Here's a fun one for us dumb Yankees. Tier 8, HMS Edinburgh. Did I get it right? Commission, 1939. If I got the pronunciation of the town wrong here, sorry, you're just going to have to put up with it for the rest of this section. Anyway, probably the most well-regarded ship in this line is that of the Town class, HMS Edinburgh, lead ship of one of the town's many subclasses. The towns were built to counter the Japanese Mogami. The ship had a pretty active service life, though, like Fiji. Didn't survive throughout the war's entirety. The ship fought a great deal both in the North Sea and Arctic Sea, serving as an escort and pursuit ship, and was sunk in 1942 while escorting a convoy of merchant ships returning from the Soviet Union to the UK. Despite the ship's somewhat short service history, HMS Edinburgh carried the well-deserved reputation of the Town-class cruisers with it. The ship has enough armor to bounce cruiser-caliber rounds, and main armament consisted of 12 6-inch guns and triple turrets, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. Secondaries consisted of 12 4-inch guns. The AA suite, 2 octuple 2-pounder pom-poms, and 8 50 cal machine guns. Torpedoes, 6 of them. The ship could also carry the Supermarine Walrus seaplane. This ship would stand out at Tier 8 amongst other cruisers in the sense that it's the only one besides the Russian Chapayev to have light cruiser caliber guns. Again, AA not really doing so well, but when you're competing with ships like Admiral Hipper that have more AA than they know what to do with, I suppose it's not really that much of a complaint. That's the regular Tier 8, but there's also a premium Tier 8 coming. HMS Belfast, commissioned 1939. This ship was very active during the war. HMS Belfast is currently a museum ship anchored in London on the River Thames. Launched on St. Paddy's Day, it's fittingly named after the Northern Irish town of Belfast. In the early stages of the war, it conducted a large number of patrols and search missions. She was instrumental in the sinking of Scharnhorst as a result of her radar equipment shadowing the German battlecruiser from outside of visual range long enough for HMS Duke of York to intercept her. She also sailed with the force responsible for carrying out the sinking of Tirpitz and bombarded German positions at Normandy. It was also expected to assist in the ground invasion of Japan, but of course the Imperial government surrendered before such a thing would ever happen. So, Belfast is comparable to Edinburgh, obviously. The ship also underwent several refits, in terms of armor, and inherited the toughness of the towns, and was equipped with 4 triple turrets mounting 6-inch guns, and 8 4-inch guns, as well as 12 2-pounder pom-poms. Later, the ship had an additional 16 pom-poms added on, as well as 8 50 cal machine guns, and 3 torpedo tubes on each side. So, at least this ship has AA, for crying out loud. It looks like it's going to be a really good ship. As for the final tiers, however, they require a little bit more digging around to find information on. Tiers 9 and 10, Neptune and Minotaur, paper ships. The Tier 9 cruiser is dubbed Neptune. However, I wasn't really able to find any relevant information on it. I couldn't find much information on the Tier 10 Minotaur either. Some people are confusing it with the Minotaur-class cruisers commissioned in 1943, but the Tier 10 design, as far as I can tell from the forum community, is a different design altogether. The Tier 10 Minotaur that is going to be featured in-game supposedly will incorporate a unique set of guns. The image you see on screen here is the most I could find on it. Obviously, still in the testing phase, and it'll probably take some time for any relevant information on it to come out. Unfortunately, that's about all the information I can talk about. If I were making this video completely blind, I would recommend maybe the Tiger class, but since it doesn't look like that'll be the case, there's no use talking about it. But I think what I've talked about here is extensive enough, concluding the video with a couple commonly asked questions regarding this line though. Where the hell are the heavy cruisers, everyone asks. That's a good point to bring up, as the Brits did develop a lot of heavy cruisers that could certainly work in this line. In fact, I talked about some of them in a video produced some time ago. Some of these heavy cruisers include the well-known HMAS Australia, a County class, and the lead ship of the York-class cruisers HMS York. Only time will tell if these ships will be added to the line, but I wouldn't doubt that Wargaming has plans to implement them eventually. I know some people are really salty about the fact that there aren't heavy cruisers in the line, but seriously. How do you think the French or the Italian tech tree people feel? They'll be holding out for even longer. It took a long time for German battleships to get to the game. How long do you think it's going to take for the French battleships? It's whatever. I just don't think the player base should be toxic concerning the Brits in this game. It's been established a long time ago that half the reason it's so difficult to make a British tech tree is because the necessary documents are hard to pick up. I'm glad Wargaming took their time with this instead of trying to force it out the door, but that's enough rambling for me. Anyway, that's British light cruisers in terms of the line that has been officially announced. What do you think of these ships? Do let me know. I really like the look of them myself, and I'm going to be spending a little more time in the Russian cruisers to prepare. But that's all I got for now. In the next video, I'll be mixing things up with a little bit of World of Tanks content for the Swedes. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe and give the video a thumbs up, share it with your friends. It really does go a long way. Until next time, I'm Gregor, and as always, thanks so much for watching.